The Vatican's hidden vault. The Vatican's secret archives contain 53 miles of shelving holding documents that most of the world cannot access. In 2019, the Church rebranded the collection as the Vatican Apostolic Archives to sound less ominous, but the restrictions remain. Only accredited scholars with specific research proposals can request limited access, and even they cannot browse freely. The archives hold papal correspondence dating back to the 8th century, including letters from Michelangelo, Abraham Lincoln, and Mary Queen of Scots. One of the most controversial documents is the 1633 trial record of Galileo Galilei, where the Church condemned him for claiming Earth orbited the Sun. The archives also contain the 1493 papal decree that divided the New World between Spain and Portugal, effectively authorizing European colonization of the Americas. Researchers can only request 3 folders per day and must wait weeks for delivery. The Vatican claims the restrictions exist to protect fragile historical documents, but critics argue the secrecy fuels conspiracy theories. In 2020, Pope Francis opened some World War II-era files, revealing correspondence about Nazi atrocities that historians are still analyzing. The Vatican's time machine. In the 1960s, Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk and physicist, claimed he built a device called the chronovisor that could capture images from the past by detecting residual electromagnetic radiation. Ernetti said he used it to witness Christ's crucifixion and even took a photograph showing Jesus' face moments before death, a blurry image he published in an Italian magazine in 1972. Ernetti described the machine as containing cathode ray tubes, antennas, and mysterious metal alloys that could tune into specific time periods like a television receiver. He claimed a team of scientists helped him build it, including Enrico Fermi, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who created the first nuclear reactor. Ernetti said the Vatican ordered the device dismantled because it threatened human privacy by allowing observers to see any moment in history. The photograph Ernetti published was later identified as a postcard image of a wooden crucifix sculpture from a sanctuary in Umbria, Italy. Before his death in 1994, Ernetti admitted the photo was fake but insisted the chronovisor itself was real. No scientist has ever found evidence the device existed, and the physics Ernetti described violates known laws about electromagnetic radiation and time. The missing Bible books. The original Bible contained 80 books, but modern Protestant versions have only 66. In 1534, Martin Luther removed 14 books during the Reformation, calling them apocrypha, texts that were useful but not divinely inspired. These books included Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, and Maccabees, which had been part of Christian scripture for over 1,000 years. The Catholic and Orthodox churches still include these texts, calling them deuterocanonical books. The removed writings contain stories of angelic intervention, prayers for the dead, and theological concepts that contradicted Protestant doctrine. One deleted passage in 2nd Esdras described a vision of the Messiah that early Christians found controversial. The decision wasn't unanimous. Scholars debated which texts were authentic for centuries. The Council of Trent in 1546 officially confirmed the Catholic canon, while Protestants followed Luther's shorter version. Today, billions of Christians read different Bibles based on 16th century theological disputes. Mary Magdalene's Lost Gospel. An ancient manuscript discovered in 1896 claims Mary Magdalene was Jesus' closest disciple and possibly his wife. The Gospel of Mary, written in Coptic on papyrus, portrays her as receiving secret teachings that even Peter and the other apostles didn't understand. The text shows Peter questioning why Jesus would share mysteries with a woman instead of male disciples. The manuscript was found in Egypt and dates to the 5th century, though scholars believe the original Greek version was written around 150 AD. It contains passages where Mary describes visions of Jesus after his death and debates theology with skeptical apostles. One controversial line has Jesus kissing Mary, though damage to the papyrus makes the exact wording unclear. The Vatican never formally banned the text, but it wasn't included in the biblical canon established in the 4th century. The Gospel contradicts the male-dominated church hierarchy by positioning a woman as Christianity's most enlightened follower. The phantom time theory. A German historian claimed in 1991 that 297 years of history never happened, and the Catholic Church helped fabricate them. Herbert Illig argued that Holy Roman Emperor Otto III and Pope Sylvester II conspired around 1000 AD to backdate the calendar, inventing the year 614-911 to place themselves in the year 1000, a date with religious significance. Illig pointed to gaps in archaeological evidence from the early Middle Ages and claimed Charlemagne was a fictional character created to fill the invented centuries. He argued that Byzantine and Islamic historical records were later altered to match the fraudulent Western timeline, requiring a massive international conspiracy spanning multiple cultures and languages. The theory has been thoroughly debunked. Astronomical records of eclipses, Islamic and Chinese historical documents, and carbon dating all confirm the traditional timeline. Historians note that the Dark Ages appear poorly documented because literacy declined and fewer records survived, not because the era never existed. Despite being rejected by academics, the phantom time hypothesis remains popular in conspiracy circles. articles. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot linen cloth bearing the image of a crucified man, has been called Jesus' burial shroud for centuries, but carbon dating says it's medieval. The Shroud of Turin shows a faint brown imprint of a bearded man, with wounds matching biblical descriptions of crucifixion, including marks from a crown of thorns and a spear wound in the side. The shroud first appeared in historical records in 1354 in France, owned by a knight named Geoffroy de Charny. In 1988, 3 laboratories independently tested fabric samples using radiocarbon dating, placing the cloth's creation between 1260 and 1390, exactly when it first appeared historically. The Vatican accepted the results but didn't declare the shroud fake. Believers argued the tests were contaminated, or that the resurrection itself altered the carbon signature through an unexplained burst of radiation. Scientists counter that the image was likely created using medieval painting techniques or by pressing the cloth against a heated bas-relief sculpture. The Catholic Church treats it as a venerated icon rather than authenticated relic. Italy's hidden UFO crash. In 1933, a UFO allegedly crashed near Milan, and Benito Mussolini's government recovered it with the Vatican's help. Declassified documents from 1996 describe a cylindrical craft that Italian forces retrieved and stored in a hangar. Mussolini reportedly created a secret department called Gabinetto RS/33 to study the object, led by scientist Guglielmo Marconi, inventor of the radio. The documents claim the craft was metallic, had no visible seams or rivets, and couldn't be opened with available tools. Mussolini allegedly consulted Pope Pius XII, who warned that the object might be demonic rather than extraterrestrial. When Italy switched sides in World War II, the craft supposedly disappeared. Some researchers claim American forces seized it and transported it to the United States. The Italian Air Force released these papers after UFO researcher Roberto Pinotti obtained them through anonymous sources. Skeptics note that no physical evidence exists and the document's authenticity has never been independently verified. The story remains unconfirmed, existing in the gray area between wartime rumor and potential cover-up. The missing Ark. The Ark of the Covenant vanished from Jerusalem around 586 BC when Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple, but some believe it's been hidden in the Vatican ever since. The biblical artifact, described as a gold-covered chest containing the 10 Commandments tablets, was Israel's most sacred object. The Bible mentions it hundreds of times until it suddenly disappears from scripture with no explanation. One theory claims the prophet Jeremiah smuggled the Ark out of Jerusalem before the invasion and hid it in a cave. Another suggests Ethiopian Christians possess it in a chapel in Axum, where a single guardian monk protects it. The Vatican theory emerged from claims that Roman forces looted it during the 70 AD destruction of the Second Temple and transported it to Rome. The Arch of Titus in Rome depicts Roman soldiers carrying the temple's golden menorah, proving they took sacred objects. However, no historical records document the Ark's capture. The Vatican has never addressed the claims, and no evidence places the Ark in its vaults. The 33-day Pope mystery. Pope John Paul I died after only 33 days in office in 1978, and the Vatican's conflicting stories fueled decades of conspiracy theories. The 65-year-old Pope was found dead in his bed on September 28th, discovered by a nun who entered his room at 5:30 a.m. The Vatican initially claimed he died at 11 p.m. the previous night while reading, then changed the story multiple times about who found him and what he was doing. John Paul I had promised to investigate the Vatican Bank's ties to Italian criminals and Freemasons. He planned to remove powerful church officials, including Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, who ran the bank and was later implicated in money laundering scandals. Days before his death, the Pope received a report detailing financial corruption involving fake securities and organized crime connections. The Vatican refused to perform an autopsy, citing Catholic tradition, though no such rule existed. His body was embalmed within 24 hours, destroying evidence. Witnesses reported his face looked contorted and his fingernails were dark, suggesting possible poisoning. The official cause was listed as heart attack, despite no medical examination. Investigative journalist David Yallop's 1984 book named potential conspirators, but the Vatican never reopened the case. The Vatican and Holocaust silence. Pope Pius XII remained publicly silent about the Holocaust while privately helping save thousands of Jews, a contradiction historians still debate. During World War II, the Pope never explicitly condemned Nazi atrocities by name, leading critics to call him Hitler's Pope. He feared that public denunciation would trigger Nazi retaliation against Catholics and worsen persecution of Jews in occupied territories. Documents released in 2020 revealed the Vatican received detailed reports about concentration camps and mass executions as early as 19 1942. Pius XII chose quiet diplomacy instead of public condemnation, instructing monasteries and convents to hide Jewish refugees. The Catholic Church claims these efforts saved 860,000 Jewish lives, though historians dispute the exact number and whether more direct action could have saved more. The Pope also worried about communism spreading if Germany fell, viewing the Nazis as a buffer against Soviet expansion. After the war, the Vatican helped Nazi war criminals escape to South America through rat lines, secret routes using church networks. In 2020, newly opened archives showed Pius XII knew about Jewish deportations but prioritized maintaining diplomatic relations with Germany. The Devil's Summoning Book. The Grand Grimoire, allegedly locked in Vatican vaults, claims to contain instructions for summoning Lucifer himself. Written in the 18th century, the manuscript describes rituals requiring specific times, locations, and sacrificial offerings to contact infernal entities. The book's most dangerous section, the Sanctum Regnum, supposedly details a pact where the summoner trades their soul for unlimited wealth and power. The text includes elaborate diagrams, Latin incantations, and warnings that failed rituals result in the practitioner's destruction. Occult historians trace the grimoire to French legend, though no one has proven the Vatican possesses an original copy. Similar books like the Lesser Key of Solomon circulate publicly, containing ceremonial instructions that inspired modern occult practices. The Vatican's Secret Archives 2019 inventory lists no such manuscript. Scholars believe the Grand Grimoire's reputation comes from 19th century occult revival movements that attributed forbidden knowledge to church vaults to make their own texts seem more authentic and dangerous. The Hidden City of Tombs. Beneath St. Peter's Basilica lies a vast necropolis, an ancient Roman cemetery containing hundreds of tombs dating back 2,000 years. The underground city wasn't discovered until 1939, when workers excavating for Pope Pius XI's burial broke through the floor. Archaeologists found intact mausoleums with frescoes, sarcophagi, and elaborate burial chambers stacked in layers descending 40 feet below the basilica. The Vatican immediately restricted access, allowing only small guided tours by appointment. Among the tombs, excavators found a simple grave marked with early Christian symbols and ancient graffiti reading Petros Ani, Greek for Peter is within. Bone fragments recovered from this site were tested in the 1960s and determined to belong to a 60 to 70-year-old man from the 1st century. Pope Paul VI announced in 1968 that the relics were identified in a way that we can consider convincing as St. Peter's remains. However, the Vatican never released the full scientific analysis, and some archaeologists dispute the identification, noting that ancient Rome contained thousands of elderly men's graves. The giant pine cone symbol, a massive bronze pine cone 13 feet tall, stands in the Vatican's courtyard of the Pigna, but this ancient symbol predates Christianity by thousands of years. The sculpture dates to the 1st century AD and originally decorated a Roman fountain. It represents the pineal gland, a brain organ that ancient cultures believed was the seat of spiritual enlightenment. Egyptian, Greek, and Roman traditions associated pine cones with immortality and divine consciousness. The staff of Dionysus featured a pine cone at its tip. Hindu and Buddhist art depicts the pineal gland as a spiritual antenna connecting humans to higher realms. The Vatican moved the sculpture to its current location in 1608, placing it prominently despite its pagan origins. Critics argue the Church adopted the symbol to represent spiritual awakening through Christian doctrine, while others claim it proves the Vatican guards ancient esoteric knowledge about human consciousness. Easter's pagan roots. Easter's timing, symbols, and name trace back to pre-Christian spring festivals honoring fertility goddesses. The holiday follows the lunar calendar, the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox, a calculation borrowed from pagan celebrations. The name Easter likely derives from Eostre, an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring. Eggs and rabbits have no connection to Jesus' resurrection, but were ancient fertility symbols. Babylonians celebrated goddess Ishtar with egg-decorating rituals 4,000 years ago. Germanic tribes honored Ostara with hair imagery representing spring's renewal. Early Christians adopted these traditions to ease pagan conversion. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD formally established Easter's date, deliberately aligning it with existing spring festivals rather than Jewish Passover, to distance Christianity from its Jewish roots. The True Cross fragments. Dozens of churches worldwide claim to own pieces of the cross Jesus died on, but if assembled, they would build a small forest. Helena, mother of Emperor Constantine, allegedly discovered the True Cross in Jerusalem in 326 AD. She reportedly identified it by placing wood fragments on a dying woman who miraculously recovered when touching the correct piece. The cross was divided and distributed across the Christian world as sacred relics. By the Middle Ages, churches in Rome, Constantinople, Paris, and Jerusalem all claimed major fragments. Protestant reformer John Calvin calculated in 1543 that the combined wood from all claimed relics would require 300 men to carry, far exceeding a single cross's weight. Scientific analysis complicates the story further. Some fragments have been carbon dated to the correct era, while others are clearly medieval forgeries. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem guards what it claims is the largest remaining piece, but authentication remains impossible without destroying the relic through testing. The Pope's secret escape route, a half-mile fortified corridor, connects the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo, a medieval escape tunnel that once saved a pope's life. Built in 1277, the Passetto di Borgo runs along the top of a wall, allowing popes to flee unseen during attacks. The covered walkway includes arrow slits, guard posts, and hidden doors leading to secret rooms. Pope Clement VII used the passage in 1527 when Holy Roman Emperor Charles V's troops attacked Rome. As soldiers breached the city, the Pope and his guards ran through the Passetto, while Swiss guards sacrificed themselves buying time. Clement hid in Castel Sant'Angelo for 7 months, while his enemies controlled Rome. The fortress's thick walls and stockpiled supplies kept him alive during the siege. The passage also served darker purposes. Popes allegedly used it to visit mistresses and conduct secret meetings away from Vatican scrutiny. Today, tourists can walk portions of the Passetto, though Vatican sections remain restricted. Vatican's hidden orientation. A 2019 investigation claimed that 80% of Vatican clergy maintain secret same-gender relationships, and the Church has never formally denied it. French journalist Frédéric Martel spent 4 years interviewing hundreds of priests, bishops, and cardinals for his book In the Closet of the Vatican. He reported finding a culture where many clergy lived double lives, publicly opposing certain lifestyles while privately engaging in them. Martel documented priests using coded language and secret meeting spots in Rome. He claimed the higher the church rank, the more likely the individual was to maintain hidden relationships. Several cardinals and bishops who publicly condemned alternative lifestyles were allegedly involved in long-term secret partnerships. The book identified a network of safe houses and private clubs where Vatican officials gathered. The Vatican released a brief statement calling the book not credible, but didn't address specific allegations. No official investigation followed. Critics note the contradiction between the Church's public positions and the alleged private behavior of its leadership, though the 80% figure remains unverified and disputed. UFO over St. Peter's. In October 2007, witnesses reported seeing a glowing disc hovering over St. Peter's Basilica, and every photograph disappeared within days. Tourists and locals described a metallic object reflecting sunlight while performing impossible maneuvers above the Vatican. Multiple witnesses independently reported the sighting to local media, with some claiming they captured photos and video on cameras and phones. Italian news outlets briefly covered the story, interviewing eyewitnesses who described the object as silent, circular, and unlike any aircraft. Several people claimed they posted images online, but those files allegedly vanished from hosting sites within 48 hours. No official explanation was provided by Italian aviation authorities or the Vatican. Skeptics suggest the sighting was a weather balloon, drone, or reflected sunlight creating an optical illusion. However, witnesses insist the object's movements defied conventional explanations. The Vatican never acknowledged the incident, and no verified photographs exist today despite multiple people claiming they documented it. The bronze peacock mystery. 2 massive bronze peacocks guard the Vatican courtyard, but these ancient symbols carry meanings that predate Christianity. The sculptures date to the 2nd century AD and originally decorated Emperor Hadrian's mausoleum in Rome. In pre-Christian symbolism, peacocks represented immortality because ancient Romans believed their flesh never decayed after death, a notion mentioned by St. Augustine, who tested and confirmed the claim. Early Christians adopted the peacock as a resurrection symbol, linking its eternal flesh to Christ's victory over death. However, the bird also carried darker associations. In Greek mythology, the peacock's 100 eyes symbolized the all-seeing giant Argus, representing surveillance and hidden knowledge. Hindu and Buddhist traditions depicted peacocks consuming serpents, symbolizing the triumph of light over darkness or good over evil. The Vatican positioned the peacocks prominently in the Cortile della Pigna, despite their pagan origins. Some researchers claim their placement represents the Church absorbing and controlling ancient wisdom traditions, while others see them as simple decorative relics from Rome's imperial past with no hidden meaning. New Year's Roman god. January 1st honors Janus, a two-faced Roman god who still influences how the world marks time. Janus ruled beginnings and transitions, depicted with one face looking backward at the past and another gazing forward into the future. Romans worshipped him at doorways, gates, and the start of important endeavors. The month January derives directly from his name, When Julius Caesar reformed the calendar in 46 BC, he moved New Year's Day from March to January 1st to honor Janus, a change that permanently altered how Western civilization tracks years. Early Christians resisted celebrating New Year on a pagan god's feast day. The Church moved New Year to Christmas or Easter for centuries, but the Julian calendar's influence proved too strong. By the 1600s, most Christian nations had returned to January 1st as New Year's Day, effectively restoring Janus's feast to global prominence. Every New Year's celebration, making resolutions while reflecting on the past year, unknowingly recreates the ancient Roman ritual of honoring the two-faced god of transitions.